problem is that you want me to talk about cult and beliefs of Slavic pre-state communities confronted with the mission of St Otto to Pomerania. And this word confronted is quite important, but this confrontation, what I want to argue in my talk, begins earlier, of course, and that's the background for that. But there is another problem. It is the fact that we are gathering here because of the anniversary of St Otto mission. And it means that my topic, well, which is a paganism, is not the main topic. It is a background, because the most important topic for us is the mission. The mission of St Otto in center, and the missionary activity in Baltic area in general. That's the most important. So, on the beginning, the organizers addressed to our sponsors, benefactors, and people that contributed a lot to organizing this conference. But I think we should firstly address to our hero, because he is our hero, and says St Ottone episcopi Bergensis ora pro nobis peccatoribus, especially because of the last night, and St Ottone apostolo Pomeranorum adjuvanos in hoc colloquium. What we should say on this occasion at the beginning, I suppose, and I want to stress, the mission is just is the main topic, and paganism is today the background. But the mission is absolutely important opportunity for us, as for me in such a case, as a researcher trying to say something new about Slavic paganism, because missionary activity is opening for us a window we can look through on old beliefs. But this window is opening for very short, for a while, for some specific problems, and much more remains behind our possibilities to see. And one of those most important events of that kind, giving us some insight into paganism, is this mission of St Otto of Bamberg. We have some other such possibilities also. One quite unique is this, what led to Titmar's description of Ridegost, what was not a mission. It was some envoy's report. But again, for a while, the window is open for us, but on some very fragmentary problems. That's one point. Well, we are concentrating on Slavic religion in this very special region, which we should take together, Polabia and Pomerania, because there are many similarities in pagan beliefs, as far we can judge according to our knowledge. That is quite special, specific version, and I'm very glad that Professor Rosik delivered the book about that for the anniversary, which is not the first book concentrating on this precisely region, Slavic beliefs in that region. It's surely not the last, but it's important. But there is another problem. Well, I was working with that problem as well, so I'm a bit boring with this topic, and in fact I don't have so much to add to the book I published some half century ago, and I was collecting the materials in the country which today don't exist, in former Judea, and when I went there to meet Ewald Schult, I unfortunately arrived to his funeral, but trying to add something new and ask some new questions. It is the question about, Professor Sikorski is here, it is the question about general approach to Slavic paganism. And I love very much the book of Professor Geistor, but the question is how much actual is the view of structuralists and the problem today? And is it possible to use this kind of approach to describe and explain particular versions of Slavic paganism? Professor Sikorski, we would prefer to treat it separately and say religions of Slavs. I prefer to say versions of that. The question is extremely important. I think this, and important also in the context of this confrontation going on here at some point. This is perfect approach, I suppose, but on a very general level. And the problem is that this brings some pattern. It is describing some pattern of thinking, which those people obviously had in mind. And obviously, I think so, bring with them to new land here on Odra estuary, on Elba estuary, in Pomerania to Polabia. And they developed that in a very specific way. But how and when? About this development in Poland, we can say not so much. I was asked once to produce a text about pre-Christian beliefs in Wielkopolska, in Greater Poland. And what I could say is that we don't know so much, in fact. The scholars usually say that we can say more about two regions. One is this Polabia, Pomerania, and another is Rus. And both are quite different. Most of colleagues, late colleagues, try to reconstruct, it's quite important. Reconstruction is always a construction. Try to reconstruct this Slavic paganism is coming from Russian paganism. Maybe because it is written in Slavic language in Povest Vremeny Liat. But I'm afraid my text about Pantheon of Vladimir, which I delivered for those meetings here, is still in printing. Is it? Well, okay. It's quite where I wanted to say that it is quite complicated problem. And what we want to say, I come back to this question: what we can say about this. What we want to know and what we wish to say, we can use in fact two ways. One is, I may I call it, if you allow me, scientific way. Looking for, like Gesht or like other scholars, looking for structures, processes, rulers, influences, etc., etc. Describing that with a lot of sophisticated terminology, analyzing, that we are on the level of analyzing. But it should bring us to some more epic way to reconstruct and tell for people, for our audience, to tell about myths. From Slavic myths, we, in fact, know almost nothing. We have some echoes, some traces that it existed, but to tell it for you, it is not easy. I really wish to tell you some myths actual in Wolińskie 1,000 years ago, and I can pretend, try to do something like that, but it will be a pure literature, a fiction. And to reconstruct that in a scientific way, I'm afraid it's impossible. What we can do, we can say something about ceremonies. I seem to be sometimes crazy about horse oracle, because I'm always speaking about horse oracle. The problem is that it is this little part of religion which is quite well described in sources, and we can do something with that. But if we want to continue with this motive of horse in Slavic religion and ask about horse offerings, what is quite important in the European beliefs, it is already not so easy, because we have some probably sacrificed horses in Żółte, for instance, but no one report about horse offering in the written sources, apart of Costas Pragensis, who is describing, unfortunately, the sacrifice of a donkey. What sounds like a mockery. Could be. But the question is if it is a trace of horse offering, but among who? Among Slavs, Germans? Again a question. So, we need some names for all that objects. If we want to construct, reconstruct the story, we need names. That's the rule of creating good story. We need some objects, some attributes. We have some, but few. We need to have some idea about the function of those attributes. About some, we know a little, but not so much. And then we need place localized on present man. It was happening here in Woliń. We know very well that Otto of Bamberg was in Woliń. We know that there were some temples, whatever it means, here in Woliń. But do we know the name of the god who was worshipped here? As far as I remember, I'm sclerotic, so perhaps I'm not remember well. It is only Julius Caesar mentioned as somebody worshipped in Woliń. And what to do with that? And it should be all that scientific way should give us material for creation of some real, well-founded story. It is not so easy. Well, speaking again, I kept coming back to this problem of Gestor book, which is a very influential. I think I'm not good in driving such graphs, so sorry. We have those people, they come here. have some Indo-European roots with pattern of thinking in mind, with some names, but which names? With some ideas, okay, and to this, all the time we're influenced of from some other religions, not Christian, still not Christian, other religions. Some from Christianity, and anyway, it ends finally with conversion. So some cross commemorating St Otto mission, I suppose, on the other side of the border, down in old Mexico, as the people in Texas say. And there is a question, which is quite important. If there was another option, as this, to choose between Christianization plus acculturation, what means simply Germanization, or resistance, which ended with defeat, and annihilation, eventually Christianization plus Germanization. In Polabia, I think they had no choice. In Rus, in contrary, they had, but we concentrate on Polabia today, and I'm not going to tell you the story about Испытание веры, which is quite interesting, quite serious, and quite important. So, finally I'm coming to my topic after this introduction. Or do I have still some time? What's a pity. Okay, well, Grossraden, the Slavic paganism in Pomerania, North Polabia. One important thing. From that region, we have the largest, I think, Ijivinda, who has publishing sources confirm my view. We have the largest corpus of sources for paganism, both written and archaeological, which is still fragmentary. And again, very special, because all those records are foreign, bringing perspective from outside. That's why we don't have myths. And but we have their description of some, but few, I want to stress, but few rituals, including some games. Archaeology. Temples, yes, at least one, in Grossraden, if it was a temple. And again, a definition, what is a temple? Surely it is not a church, with roof or not, a shrine, a large topic to develop about what we are talking. Surely not about pagan counterpart of Christian church, because paganism is not simply counterpart of Christianity. And people, including missionaries, including scholars, tend to forget about that. Idols, we have some, not only in description, thanks to Fisher Insel idols, we have proof that something like that exists. If the gods are represented as idols, it means that there is anthropomorphization. Sorry, pardon my French, sorry for using scientific terminology, but I will continue. I'm very sorry. But there is a problem. Anthropomorphization, domestication of gods, we could say. And again, in this Pomerania, quite a special feature among those gods, which is so-called polycephalism. It should be better to say polyphalism, it will be shorter, but it is about something else. But in India, you can find something like that. And that's a problem, because we don't have, apart of some small archaeological evidences we could eventually interpret in favor of some multicephalic supernatural beings outside of Pomerania, but I don't believe it is very much true. But there is a problem. Polycephalic, multi-headed, or multi-faced God, that's a little different, but exists. Such feature appears in India, but if we turn to neighboring Scandinavian beliefs, there is already a problem, because polycephaly is monstrous feature. It is something quite typical for enemies of gods, for giants, mostly Tursar, but not for gods. Of course, God can be everything, but usually looks anthropomorphic. Giants, especially Tursar, could be monstrous. And those Polanian, Pomeranian Slavic gods seems to be monstrous. That's a problem. I don't know what to do with that, but I'm too old to bring a new version of my paganism book, but maybe some younger fellow can deal with that. Well, I'm still by introduction, boring you, but finally I want to distinguish preliminary some chronological strata, so to say. And I would start with the settlement period, which is the settlement of Slavs here in this area, Pomerania. And from that time we have no written information about Slavic beliefs, almost. At the end of this time, in fact, during the new time already, but it belongs in a way to what I want to say, we have this information about Simulacrum Saturni by Widukind, but it is not a part of any conversion story. It's not a part of any missionary activities. It is simply one of the spoils. And somebody's proud very much. My colleagues have gold, and I have something more interesting. Some more funny thing. At that time, those Slavs, between those pagan Slavs and Christians, are already Saxons. And there comes the development of Slavic beliefs, but we don't know about that. The next period is the German conquest. Bloody battles against Slavic pagan kings, like Stoignev, for instance, and execution of Stoignev, in my opinion, give beginning for Slavic decapitations in human offerings, my malicious hypothesis. Comes the establishment of the net of bishoprics, but very soon, which was erased by great pagan uprising. And there is a quotation, I think it's quite important, from Titmar, who said, judging that this Christianization, it was not successful and not properly done. That's important. Vice Christi et piscatoris eius venerabili spetri de incept varia demonice heresis cultura venerator et flebilis hoc mutatio non solum gentilibus verum etiam a Christianis extolitur. And in another place, continuing the story. Nostra et enim facinora nobis formidinem et his surgebant validem mentem. That's quite important. This was not a proper... Titmar was a good bishop, good Christian. We don't did it properly, he said. Well, the consequence. Well, does it work? There's a reconstruction of paganism at the end of the 10th in the 11th century, like in Sweden, isn't it? And what it is, creation of a kind of new paganism. I'm going too far saying that, but there is a lot of experience with dealing with Christian, what I can say in what they do. Speaking about Lutetians and Ridegost temple, they are called later on Retra. Speaking about Swarovits, we have priests and their power. Almost a kind of theocracy sometimes, including temple fiscalism. With some, the question is, elements like tithes and poll taxes on the level of description made by Christians, or simply copied by pagans to organize the paganism. Why not? Offerings including human offerings, which are used in some texts as some horror stories, of course, but describing facts. Idols with polycephalia. We have, analyzing that, we can observe many similarities to other pagan systems, including Romans. The question is how far it is influence, how far it is coincidence, how far it is similar development. Of course, there is a question of syncretism, but I don't have a time. I mentioned Ridegost. And there is finally missionary period, with, as one of the most important elements and events, this St Otto mission. And the end is, of course, the fall of Archona. What we can, and Staszek Rosik was talking about that in his splendid book, what can be typical for that new version of Slavic paganism developed here? For instance, those gods' name on wheat, but we have also in Piast dynasty family having this name. And some speaking names like Trudla. Our Slovenian colleagues wish to say that it is very ancient Slavic pagan gods, but I think rather it's quite new creation, another kind of cognomen. And all that is already at the time of St Otto mission overlapping with the Crusade ideology, which is some new organizatory factor which will dominate the conversion process later on in the Second Baltic area in next centuries. Conclusions. Do I have time for conclusions or not? Briefly. Well, this variant of Slavic paganism is the best described. Developed in bitter struggles with Christianity against German, partly Polish and Danish conquest on the rich soil. Remember, that's the territory where soon after Hansa had his cradle. The question is also how typical is this variant of Slavic belief for other Slavic territories? I already stressed that mission is a window for paganism for us, but I want to repeat, a window through which we are able to see just some few things. And much, much more, I believe, remained in shadow. That's it. I'm sorry. Nothing new. If you want to read about my fresh new view on paganism, Slavic paganism, please read my book from the time, from the previous millennium. Okay, thank you for your attention. you.